government agencies have at times strongly resisted declassification of these types of files. When Congress passed the JFK Records Act, they by law created the Assassination Records Review Board. The Review Board's mission is to locate, review, and release as much material as possible relating to the death of John F. Kennedy. COPA has been working with the Review Board to help identify and prioritize the release of assassination records. Support COPA and help take advantage of this historic opportunity to open the files. COPA held its third annual national conference on October 18th through 20th, 1996 in Washington, D.C.
Presentation both in the depth of what it's going to give you and in the fact that it will allow you, for the most part, to draw your own conclusions. You'll hear from Vince Palamara on some of the work he's done in the Secret Service, and time permitting, you'll hear some things from me on the Warren O mission.
Okay.
Our next speaker is a young researcher who's been involved in a case for a number of years, and who has certainly done the right thing and said, basically there's one area I want to look into, and I want to look into it as intensively as I can, and believe me when I tell you, he has done so. In studying the not-so-secret service, Vince Palamara has done an incredible job of bringing some things to light. He was in the post-COPA review of last year, when people filled out the little forms and said, what did you like, what were the high points. Vince Palamara's presentation was literally at the top of the scale for what happened last year, and we're very honored to have him back with us this year. So please welcome and give your full attention to Vince Palamara as we continue Conspiracy in the Round.
Thank you. Back in 1988, I took an intense interest in the assassination. In 1990, based off that intense interest, I focused on the Secret Service. There was many things that the Secret Service did and did not do that struck me at the time. But this was before I had done any primary research, had spoken to any of the former agents. At the time, frankly, I just didn't have the courage to call any of them or make any kind of contact. But just through the years, I just saw more and more things that led me to question. And originally, I saw everything in black and white. Everything was sinister. I think we all start out that way. We don't see shades of gray a lot of times. Everything's, cuts one way or another. So to make a long story short, when I started to contact these gentlemen, slowly but surely, I expected them to, for lack of a better phrase, debunk some of my early theories, speculations, whatnot. Surprisingly, not only did they corroborate many of them, they added many more layers of questions. I'm here today in 1996 to tell you that I really don't have a straight black and white answer for you. While I do not think that the Secret Service was sinisterly involved in a conspiracy, I have a hard time, a very hard time, after what I've uncovered in all the primary documentation and contacts I've made, sweeping everything I've found away as innocent, albeit gross negligence. And like I said in my abstract, it's a prelude to disaster. The presidential protective measures used and ignored by the Secret Service up to and including November 22nd, 1963, a visual investigation. I'd like to thank, he's obviously not here, Jim Cedrone from the JFK Library, provided me with many films and the Cecil Stoughton photographs, some of which are going to appear in this video. Other ones, he was very kind to identify to the greatest certainty he could many of the motorcade footage and whatnot that I compiled. Like I'm sure a couple of you in this room, I have a pretty extensive video library, to put it mildly, and I went through and I compiled as many motorcades as I could during the Kennedy years. Very hard to find. Again, Jim Cedrone at the library said they remember your entrances and your exits and everything else in the middle doesn't mean anything. Well, I tell you what, if you see a lot of documentaries, they usually show the inaugural motorcade and they show Dallas. Not too many other ones, and that's created a lot of confusion. And I'm here to dispel that confusion and to spell out in a visual format what I've uncovered. So here goes.
Okay, this is Bogota, Colombia. 2 agents, Bob Lilly, Roy Kellerman, on the back of the presidential limousine. There's the full bubble top. Excellent motorcycle formation, close fall-up car. Sam Kinney was driving that fall-up car. He was maintaining the normal distance. Bright, sunny day. Bob Lilly told me that many times the bubble top was on either partial or full in this configuration. Mexico City, summer 1962. There's an agent right there, walking on Kennedy's side, motorcycle next to Kennedy, close follow-up car. I really didn't want to jump ahead to anything that happens in Dallas, but I will tell you, supposedly, President Kennedy did not want motorcycles next to him. This is from the JFK Library. This is President Kennedy's trip to Italy. That, by the way, is Winston Lawson hanging onto the back of the limousine. What's the problem? Well, according to a report after the fact, President Kennedy was dead, it alleged that President Kennedy did not want agents riding on the rear of the presidential limousine in Italy, and none were on there. And this has turned out to be false. Soon we will be coming up to, this was edited because this was just a government services film, and the motorcade is actually just a supplement to the rest of footage of that trip. Motorcycle formation is excellent and normal. He normally had anywhere between 12 to 18 motorcycles, usually anywhere between at least 5 to 9 on each side. Very close follow-up car. And if you'll notice, the press was in front of the limousine and behind the limousine. Normal standard procedure, clear overpass, another standard procedure. Never was have anyone on the overpasses. It's Germany, June 1963. Again, agents on the rear of the limousine. Good motorcycle formation. Special Agent Charge Gerald Bain, who I spoke to, riding in the front seat of the limousine. And although in this particular motion picture it's hard to see, military aide Ted Clinton is sitting in the front seat. This was standard, almost without exception, whether it was Washington, D.C. or foreign or domestic trip, military aides rode in the front of the limo. This is England, July '63. Full bubble top. President Kennedy allegedly did not want ever. So there it is. Again, no rain. Another myth that it was only used for inclement weather. 3 agents I spoke to, Bob Lilly, Sam Kinney, Rufus Youngblood, and another one, Thomas Keller, before the House Select Committee, admitted the bubble top was a deterrent, would shield prospective assassins' view via the sun's glare, possibly deflect a bullet, and many people thought it was bulletproof, so in that respect it was a psychological deterrent, if nothing else. This is slow motion, obviously. This is, again, in the course of much other interesting human interest type of footage, but I've tried to segregate just the pertinent footage here. And that's the driver, Bill Greer. Bill Greer, 90 to 95% of the times drove the presidential limousine, and Sam Kinney, again, 90 to 95% of the time drove this fall apart. This is Germany, I call part 2. This is the Cecil Stoughton photo. You saw this in motion. There's Chuck Zaboral. I'm not sure who the other agent is, but again, riding on the rear of the limousine. And if you haven't noticed yet, these are obviously foreign trips. I'm focused on the foreign trips first. Here's the press. Imagine in Dallas, if this press would have been here like they normally would. Here's the motorcycles. There's agents on the side of the limousine. Chuck again. I'm not sure who this gentleman is, but I know that he was at least around in the Nixon days. And if you notice the change in cars, that's one of two well-used 1956 Cadillac convertibles that were sometimes used as the presidential limousine. There's Roy Kellerman, right beside Kennedy. This is Latin America, 1962. Again, if you read up on Jim Bishop, William Manchester, and the Warren Report and some of the reports and volumes after the fact, none of this should be happening because supposedly President Kennedy didn't want these things. And they have a direct bearing on what happened on the Texas trip, but there's more to come here. Jerry Bain, special agent in charge of the White House detail, did not make the Texas trip. There's Floyd Bourne, who's number 2 assistant. Protocol, these men always either went with the president by themselves or together. Here's Jerry Bain instructing the president where to exit the vehicle. President Kennedy had an adorable quality. Sometimes he forgot which way to enter and exit a speech site. Here he is in Fort Worth, the morning of the assassination, conferring with Roy Kellerman, Paul Burns, where to go after he greeted the crowd. Again, it's repeated. There's John Reddy there. Secret Service, he liked the Secret Service and he never interfered with any irrationally. Everything he would do is wade into the crowds. He relied on them. Here's to dispel some misconceptions. This is candidate Kennedy. There were no Secret Service protection for candidates back then. He relied on local police and bodyguards. So this has created confusion, perspective confusion by some people maybe. Example 2, military bases. There was no overt protection of any kind. No bubble top, not even motorcycles. Obviously nobody clinging to the back of the limousine because you had our forces who were on very friendly ground. Examples, plural, number 3. This is Washington, D.C. Again, no real overt protection. The only thing they did was they would use 2 fallout cars. And interesting, there's the partial bubble there. They just have it on the driver's side this time. This is when King Hassan came to Morocco, summer of '63. I think actually this is around September. And again, what they would do, and answer a question maybe that I haven't, is, well, okay, why in Washington, D.C. wouldn't they have that kind of overt protection? The reason why was because Washington, D.C. was a security man's dream. They had literally all the buildings checked, employee manifests, manholes sealed and protected. They did not need that. It would be a waste of time. The only thing you did was add 2 fallout cars, a lot of motorcycles before and after, but not on the side. And another customary thing was to have military lining the street, facing the crowd. Normal thing. Another thing that creates confusion, final example here, the inaugural. People see this and probably think, well, Kennedy didn't want the bubble top or any of this stuff. Look at this. Again, Washington, D.C. Like Jim Cedrone at the JFK Library said, they remember your entrances and exits. That's why 90% of the media request the inaugural and assassination films. They really don't care about this stuff. This is ancillary at best. Here's El Paso, Texas, June 5th, 1963. The initial planning of the Texas trip. There's Jerry Bain, who was in the front seat. Bill Greer is driving the car. Governor Connolly is sitting in the back seat. Agents rode on the back of the limousine off and on this trip. Jerry Bain obviously did not make the Texas trip. He took his very first vacation. He was in the White House detail since 1941, and other than maybe a day here and there, never took an actual vacation. And he accrued all that federal leave, took it the weekend of the president's murder. The number 2 man did not make it to Dallas. Number 3 man, third stringer was making his first trip on his own. September 25th, Ashland, Wisconsin. There's President Kennedy on this side. Agents walking by the car. Press bus right there. Imagine if in Dallas they would have been in a traditional position. And obviously from the angle, press was in front. That's another thing that's unstated in these films and photographs, that the press was in a traditional position in front. We wouldn't need Abraham Zapruder. We would have many multiple angles of professional film. The segment's repeated here. Okay, this backtracks a little bit in the sequence. This is obviously John Glenn, February '62. This is basically just to show, there was a couple different cars. Everybody thinks of the SX100 limousine, well, there were several versions of it. Here's the motorcycle policemen doing their job, right there, intercepting the crowd right beside the car. This was basically just included to show what the motorcycle people did besides riding on the car. They were also to intercept, well-meaning well-wishers. It's too close. Billings, Montana, September 63, from the Kennedy Library. Agents ride on the back of the car. Some military aid, standard stuff. He either rode with Kennedy in the jump seats or in the front seat. And someone was questioning this. Yes, the seat is raised here. That was at the president's discretion. There's JFK, there's military, I'm not sure who this is, but there it's raised there. And this car, let's note the speed of the car in terms of proximity, they usually flew at least 30 miles an hour at the least, but usually upwards of 50, and when that trip to Bogota, Colombia showed, they were going upwards of 70, 80 miles an hour with these men riding on the back of the car. There's a clip of it in real time. Again, these are from general services, government services, films. So you got to keep in mind this motorcade footage was not the primary focus. Again, military aid, Clifton, or McHugh. There's Greer, there's Gerald Bain, who normally sat in this position. Someone with the jump seats. Again, this is just to show what was standard procedure. We're getting closer to the Texas trip here. This is still Billings, Montana. There's Roy Kellerman. Okay, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, October 19th, 1963. You'll see this is going to fade in. There's Floyd Boring, military aid, Bill Greer, JFK, motorcycles riding right next to him, but supposedly in Dallas, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, he did not want motorcycles next to him. He didn't like that. It was his desire. He supposedly didn't want agents in the back of the car, bubble pops, motorcycles. He wanted the ride change. He didn't want the trademark, on and on and on. Jim Cedrone was amazing with this clip. This is 3 weeks before Dallas. Jerry Bain. And there's President Kennedy getting into a bubble top car. But remember now, you're doing your reading, he supposedly didn't want bubble tops. 3 weeks before Dallas, he didn't mind getting into a car with a bubble top. It's only through, like I said, contacting these men. A lot of these discoveries, for lack of a better term, were accidental. I expected them to confirm a lot of things before I did my own reading, thinking, and contacting these men and getting the corroboration. Special agent in charge, Jerry Bain, the man who was opening the door for him, said Kennedy never interfered with their actions at all. Floyd Boring, number 2 man, said the same thing. He's never, not once in a while, never. It started to sound like a broken record. Rufus Youngblood passed away about a week and a half ago. I did the same thing. In fact, I'm quoting him now. He said President Kennedy wasn't a hard ass. This is 4 days before Dallas, Tampa, Floyd Boring. You're never going to see Kellerman with the president before Dallas. He's a third stringer. Emory Roberts, who will focus in Dallas, Floyd Boring, president. Don Lawton, who I spoke to both of these gentlemen. Emory Roberts passed away, but I'll get to that. Chuck Zaboral. Chuck Zaboral was probably one of the most, reluctant people to talk to me when I started getting into these things. He interrupted our conversation when I said about President Kennedy's alleged desires. He said, "Where did you read that?" And he goes, "Do you want me commenting officially? I'm speaking to someone I don't even know." Needless to say, I struck a nerve. Chuck, about to get on the back of the car, and you'll see Don Lawton getting on the back of the car. Again, you read your over-the-counter history in your public libraries. President Kennedy was the most difficult president to protect and didn't want any of these measures. It's just the opposite. And this is from NBC. This was rebroadcast in 1988 on the A&E network. This is Houston, day before. We go to the original plan. 18 motorcycles inside a limousine. President Kennedy supposedly didn't desire this at the November 21st meeting of the Secret Service. The November 20th meeting, no Secret Service men were present, and his original plan was used, ironically, despite the verbal change, was used in all the prior Texas stops except for Dallas. This is Fort Worth, the morning of the murder. Here's a motorcycle right beside Kennedy. Right there. And you even see an agent running by briefly, and that kind of stuff. Even the Hasselhoff community said that this was uniquely insecure what the Secret Service did. And this you might remember from last year. This is Love Field WFA footage. Secret Service, again, I'm not out to denigrate them totally. They did a great job here. This is, again, modern day stuff. Roy Kellerman, first major trip on his own, whereby Boehner born. Imagine going to the Super Bowl, to make an analogy, and get your third stringer who never really had any experience in there. This is basically what this is. Dallas was a hot city. They went by cold, warm, and hot in their ratings of cities. Dallas, long before General Walker or anything, was a hot city. PRS found no threats despite 3 checks in Dallas. Rabid right-wing country, nut country. He found nobody who wished ill the president. Again, this is from last year, Henry Rivka. And new reports, the AARP, we have to thank the ship reports for the month of November. He rode in the San Antonio and Houston and Fort Worth follow cars. He was not the driver. He was a protected agent. The new Sturgis film shows him jumping out of the follow car, Carswell, first agent on, again, not the driver. Uh-oh, here comes Emory Roberts to rise in his seat. And they have him stop what he's doing. Now this is actually on the footage here. You can see his hand gestures back. I've slowed this down, obviously. You can find this in David Wolper's presentation. He raises his hand with his, telling him to jump back, and there's Henry there, saying what kids. Paul Landis is making room for Henry on the follow car. And it gets better or worse depending on which way you want to look at it. And the new Secret Service shift reports from the ARB and the archives. Henry Roberts made not one mistake. Like I said last year, I was wrong. He made 2 mistakes in 2 separate reports. He placed Rivka in the center rear seat. Then later on, he said, oh, I was mistaken. He remained at Love Field. So for some reason, he thought he did get on the fault car. And to make matters worse, Winston Lawson, in his final survey report, makes the same mistake. But strangely, Henry Rivka is not even mentioned at all in the preliminary report. So something's really, again, he's still doing it there. In real time, sources for this over the counter is David Wolper's 4 Days in November. You can see this for yourself. I was not aware that that was actually relatively commonly available here. Okay, again, this is if I had to summarize foreign trips, agents on or near the rear of limousine by John F. Kennedy, motorcycles, the quantity and quality of formation by JFK side, military aid, Special Agent Charge Bain and Boring on trips. Press was in front or near the limo. Bus was near the limo to the rear. Bubble top, partial or full, not always used, but a common thing. Speed of the car is crucial in proximity. Clear overpasses. In fact, in Stoughton's book, page 160 from 1973, Jackie had said, after the Italy trip, that she wanted Stoughton to stay in the fog car to take pictures from now on. He did up to November 21st. November 22nd, Dave Powers took his place and Stoughton was far in the back of the motorcade. I wrote to the gentleman and he would not answer my question of who or why he was placed in the back, near, out of sight of, Dallas. Like I said last year, here's spectators on this side of the street. Emory Roberts tried to make the excuse of why General Reddy didn't do his job, but there was no spectators on that side of the street. That's why they didn't have to protect Kennedy. So it's either his fault or there was no spectators or the weather. I'm sure we can all think of some more excuses, but it doesn't wash anymore. Roy Kellerman said no obstacle would stand in his way during his poignant Warren Commission testimony, but he sees the president hit. In fact, they all do. And rather than doing anything, even in vain, he turns back to Bill Greer and says, get out of line, we've been hit. Bill Greer's already looked back. This is his second look back. Disobeys a direct order from his superior. Kennedy is killed. 5 different agents take responsibility for radioing to Lawson in the lead car about getting to Parkland Hospital. There's only one channel, 4 of them are 9. Which ones, I don't know. It's your guess as good as mine. During Jesse Curry's LBJ Library oral history, he said that there was no radio communication between the limousine and the lead car, and Lawson's portable radio, quote, was not working too well at the time. Again, with all due respect to the incredible amount of work that's been done by authors and researchers, and they've done work long before I was even, around in this case. I think it gets down to basics here. Secret Service did their job, we wouldn't be here. And all the endless excuses and scenarios we can conjure up, why did they blame Kennedy after the fact? In reports, why did William Manchester allege that Floyd Waring heard President Kennedy say, quote, get those ugly charlatans off the back of the car? Floyd Waring tells me he never spoke to Manchester. You see Manchester's notes, and it's true, he was never interviewed. Where did he get the quote? Henry Roberts was interviewed twice by Manchester. That's a possible source. That was the foreign trip summary. As far as in America, summary of security deficiencies, no military lining the route, facing a crowd, standard stuff. No agents on or near the limousine by JFK. This was blamed on President Kennedy. There was only 4 motorcycles not even flanking the limousine. No military riding in the limo, McHugh or Clifton. McHugh even said this was unusual in 1976. No bubble top, partial or full. Okay, we can say he didn't know it was a bubble top, but he blamed it on Kennedy. Sam Kennedy told me it's in his Warren Commission volume report, volume 18. He was solely responsible for the removal. Well, I had to blame it on Kennedy. Here's Henry Ribby getting out of the fog car at Carswell Air Force Base. So he was a protective agent. But the new reports coming up from the ARB confirmed that anyway. Special Agent George Bain, number 2 man Waring were absent against protocol. Kellerman, number 3 man first major trip on his own. Stu Knight, especially in charge of the VP detail, was not on the trip. Rufus Youngblood was supposed to replace him on November 25th, but because of what happened in Dallas, he rose higher, and Stu Knight went way back. Salinger, press secretary, was not there. 3rd stringer, Malcolm Kilduff, on his first major trip on his own. We know what happened. Press further back. Press buses, photographers, and Cecil Stoughton, who rode there up to the 21st. Motorcade route was changed. Jerry Bain confirmed this for me. He said the House Select Committee asked him in executive session why the motorcade route was changed. He said it was. It's a contrast. Secret Service, despite criticisms, did their job this day. Spoke to this man, Jerry Parr, deserves the medal. Did an outstanding job. Instead, their agile mind, fleetness of foot, didn't have a revved up supercar, didn't even have the amount of seconds that the men in Dealey Plaza had. Despite criticisms, and despite what we might think about President Reagan, the man lived, the country was saved another savage assassination. And again, the contrast. I'm picking up where I left off. There were alternate routes, Sam Kinney and Wynn Lawson confirms to me. They were not spelled out and obviously not used. The route itself violated Secret Service regulations, as we see, because of the turns. Turns over 190 degrees were against Secret Service regulations. It was 120 degree on Elm Street. The slow speed, there was a warehouse district, which Chief Inspector Michael Trina said was the deadliest place to bring a president. It was published against regulations, which was denied by the Secret Service, but they did it. My chief suspects are Greer, Roberts, and Boring. Roberts ordered the men not to move on Elm Street, according to Sam Kinney. Sam Kinney confirmed a statement that I thought was exaggerated in high treason, and it's vindicated because Sam said exactly right. We know about his recall of John Reddy, which he blamed on the speed of the limousine in the fog car. But the speed of the car is actually 11.2 miles per hour, not the 25 to 30 miles per hour they said in the reports. The cars were only 5 feet apart. They said in the reports it was 20 to 25 feet apart. We know about Greer's 2 looks back and his disobeying of his direct order, and Roy Kellerman's look back. The overpass in Dealey Plaza was not clear. PRS, despite 3 checks in rabid right-wing Dallas nut country, nothing was found. A PRS man was making his first major trip in the follow-up car. That's like someone who works a desk job. What's he doing in the fob car? That's Glenn Bennett, by the way. He made a crucial observation. Dr. Berkeley, over protests, was driven further back in the motorcade. Ambulance on standby was gone, whether we believe the alleged seizure victims or not. No squad car was deleted over the protests of Chief Curry, but it was used in, for example, New York on November 14th. Sheriff's Department was told to stand down between November 21st and 22nd. The motorcade order was changed, confirmed by new House Select Committee documents over an interview with Winston Lawson, including the presidential limo, press buses, and the mayor's car. The lead car was a closed sedan. Translation, useless. Umbrella Man was not stopped or noted about. Neither described, written or oral. We might say, forget about this thing about him being an assassin. Forget even about a signal. At the Beltsville, Maryland, James Raleigh training facility, men with open umbrellas pop up at mock motorcades to this day. And in the Secret Service rule book, you're supposed to look out for things like that. The drinking incident of November 21st to 22nd involved 4 agents on the fallout car. One of them was Paul Landis here. And the others were Clint Hill, John Reddy, and the aforementioned Glenn Bennett. Secret Service agents of the mysterious repute appeared in Dealey Plaza, as we know. And the bottom line on all of this is JFK and LBJ were in the same city, same motorcade, and slow-moving open vehicles in close proximity to each other. Again, this was blamed on John F. Kennedy, and I can tell you right now, I spoke to about 20 to 25 agents, and they debunked it. Kennedy had nothing to do with this. And we're here today because of their actions and their inactions. Thank you.